Hello, creepy crawlies. If this is me live, I think this is me live. It's supposed to be DL live, but we have a new backstage person who's doing the backstage stuff. And now I'm here. It's great, isn't it? Hey!
Hey, here I am. And guess what? I have my little friend with me, but my friend has a new friend.
Oh, great. Oh, yay!
His
I
name,
love the Saw movies.
he's named Billy.
Oh, it's
Billy.
delightful.
Billy and
Billy
Baphomet
and
are friends.
Baphomet.
Okay, I'm
Lovely.
sorry. Um, so he was a goodie that we got this weekend. And I guess I'll just kind of jump in and just quickly say that for those of you who are not currently following me online, I was at Texas Frightmare, which is probably the largest. Would you say it's the? Because I know Lauren, you've been there before as
I
well.
have.
Would you say it's the largest horror con in the nation right now?
It's
Mm.
the only one I've ever even heard of. I mean, I know there are others, but when everyone talks about a horror convention, every time it is Texas Frightmare that they are talking
Mhm.
to me about. So yeah, I'd give it the badge, the what is this trophy? That there you
You are the biggest trophy. I'm sorry. Is there a trophy for that?
go.
Mm.
I don't know.
I
Okay.
don't.
Um,
Yes-ish.
okay. Yeah, so we were there this weekend and of course we had a fabulous time and we will talk about that a bit later. We have a very interesting source of material this evening
Mm.
that we are wanting to discuss. And Magda, would you like to go ahead and kind of jump in and tell us a little bit about what we're going to be hearing about and discussing this evening?
Yes, let's. Let's see. Eli says, "Holy crap, my hashtags here work." I mean, hi. Hello,
Holy
Eli.
crap. Hashtag holy crap, it's Eli.
Lovely to see you.
I like that. Can we do holy crap, it's Eli?
For our next T-shirt.
Okay.
There we are.
We have a topic.
We
We have a
have a
topic.
topic.
We have a
Today
topic.
we are exploring one of the mysteries of my homeland, Scotland, and in particular, Edinburgh.
Oh,
The Arthur's Seats miniature coffins, which were discovered, and no one actually knows why or what they exactly are. So we'll just
All right.
jump in. In 1836, five little boys were hunting rabbits on the northeast slopes of Arthur's Seat, which is this lovely place here. It's the main
Pretty.
oh,
peak.
that's
It's
beautiful.
lovely. It's part of a national park. It's stunning. I've gone hiking there before. It's a lovely walk, and it's known for many people going there on holidays and such, and just for walking. These five boys were rabbit hunting and decided to lark about near some of the more cavernous sections of Arthur's Seat, which is the name of the large peak. Point of fact, that section of hills there in Edinburgh are actually an extinct volcano. Funny thing to
Hmm.
know.
You
Well,
say it's an extinct volcano, so it's no longer
yeah,
active?
it is
Okay.
well and truly extinct, but it's a hilly part of Edinburgh.
Interesting.
It's the bones of the
It's the
volcano.
bones. It's the bones. As they were playing about, they cracked a piece of slate and discovered that it was hiding a cave. And inside the cave, they found 17 miniature coffins arranged in a three-tiered stack. There were 8 coffins on the bottom, 8 coffins in the middle, and one on top. They were all separated by thin slabs of slate.
Huh.
Each 4-inch long coffin contained a small wooden figure with painted black boots and individually crafted clothing. As we see here, this is one of the that's part of the display in the National Museum of Scotland of some of the coffins as they were found. Beautiful
Wow.
little pine coffins with
Yes.
little decorative tin accents around them.
So they look like very so when I'm looking at them, you said they were like 4 inches.
Mhm. About four
Okay,
Yeah,
to
I'm trying to
five.
like
so
measure out how
oh yeah, I'm
much
like,
inch is an
They're
inch.
tiny.
no,
To
They're
they're
4 to 5 inches, so about the size of your hand.
but
Little.
okay, and it looks like they're just basically shaped like a because I know a lot of people when they hear coffins,
Mm,
they picture that specific
no,
that specific shape. These are more like your traditional old pine box
I
style coffins,
just so
and it looks like that they were dressed differently. However, they had the same boots on, and they were little ceramic head dolls, maybe,
They
or
were little wooden
wooden.
carved
Okay,
dolls, a bit like old school wooden soldiers that they had back in the day in, say, the
oh,
1700s.
okay.
So little wooden soldiers with movable arms, and each had their own individual, different little outfits, different fabrics, all of it, but with little wooden boots. Ideal.
Okay, so they were full. Were they fully articulated, like moving
No,
arms and legs, or just their arms
just
moved?
the arms, just the
Not
arms
like the
moved.
new
Okay,
school Barbies,
No,
like
no,
the
they
old
just moved
school
up and down.
Barbies.
So I,
hmm,
it
interesting.
was also noted that they all displayed various levels of decay. They're
Mhm.
not sure if this was because of how they were stacked,
Mm.
because the bottom layer was the most decayed, the next the less, and the top was almost pristine. So it could be that they were placed there in different time periods, or it could be just
Hmm,
that damp set in farther
Mm.
down than
yeah.
above. But no one's really sure about that. But that's how they were found in the chamber. The boys apparently weren't particularly reverent of what they found, and were said to have played football with them for a while, tossed them about,
Oh!
kicked them, played about as boys do.
Okay, how
Mm.
old were the boys?
Oh, they were wee.
Oh, okay.
We're saying maybe the oldest might have been 10 at the most. They were wee boys.
Okay,
They're not teenagers at the like. So they're
Okay.
just playing about. Didn't know what they'd found.
they found a
Um,
toy.
Yeah, they
so
found a toy.
it gets a bit fuzzy from here as to how they came into possession of something other than the mountain. No one really knows, but there was one report, I believe, in the newspaper, The Scotsman, at the time, that the boys went to school like the next day and told their schoolmaster about it. He was a man named Mr. Ferguson, and that he actually went and retrieved them the following day. Um, Afterwards, they just sort of passed back and forth, and we're not really sure who had them or where they went, but there were 17 to begin with.
Hmm.
Somewhere along the line, there was a jeweler in South Andrew Street in Edinburgh who became the lucky recipient of all of the coffins, and he actually put them on display in a private museum of his own. And
Oh,
these are
that's cool.
the lovely coffins. As you can see, each has its own little individual outfit. Some of it's decayed to the point where they don't have an outfit. But you see all those little details on the coffin lids.
Oh
Each
yeah.
coffin
Yeah.
lid has almost like a plaque, and as if it had hinges all the way around it, done in tin.
Mhm.
They're just lovely. They're very beautifully done.
Lot of love put into that.
Well, in 1845, the collection was auctioned when Fraser retired, and the coffins were advertised as the celebrated Lilliputian coffins found at Arthur's Seat. They sold for £4 at the time, which would be about £250 today, so between $250 and $300 at the time.
Wow. Okay.
So, and they stayed in private hands for a good 50 years. Until in 1901, a woman by the name of Christina Cooper of Dumfriesshire donated them to the National Museum of Scotland, which is where they are today. The fun thing is, there's the beautiful, that is the
Oh wow,
centre
That is
gallery of the
gorgeous.
National Museum of
beautiful.
Scotland. It's beautiful. They have so many interesting things there. It's a lovely place to visit.
Why am I thinking that there was a scene from Penny Dreadful filmed there
Actually, I was
with
just
It
thinking the
Dracula?
might.
same thing.
It
Yes.
might. There are quite a lot of places, museums and observatories who have that sort of lovely long look to them with the open. Let's see, Eli says maybe a kid playing with toy soldiers at the time. Maybe the kid got too realistic and buried the dead toys.
Mm.
That was a very
Interesting.
creative child with those lovely, lovely coffins they
And
made.
see, my brain went somewhere
That
so much darker
Mm.
and
toy collectors
sadder.
take
See,
notes.
that's what I'm curious. I'd like to know, do either of you have a theory as to where you think that these came from or why they were put there? Do tell me, Lauren, would you start?
I have two, and they're both along the lines of trigger warning, dead
Okay.
kids.
Mm-hmm.
Either it was the child's toy that they played with, and as the child passed, they buried the toys as well, or it was because I know that people did lose a lot of children back then, a lot. So it could have been like each toy represented a child lost throughout the family.
It's entirely
That's
possible.
my theories there, at least.
DL, what about you?
Um, I actually kind of lean the same way, but I'm not going to necessarily say that it's for mourning purposes, maybe more
Okay.
protection purposes. When you think about,
Oh.
I don't know what, considering the era that they were buried in, they were
Mhm.
very elaborate, and maybe these were more offerings than it's like, here, please take this, especially considering that they're small child. There's a lot of historical lore that goes along the lines of fooling fairies, fooling. It's like, if we think, or fooling whatever myths might be in the area. If I give you my quote babies, here are my
Mhm.
babies, let's bury them, and they are now yours, and those, I'm giving you these in exchange for my real ones. Or, I mean,
Mhm.
there's so many different things that
That's
can go
good.
alongside it. Yes, I do also think that it could possibly be a
Mhm.
mourning mother who buried them, because especially being in the middle of nowhere, the but Arthur's Seat seems like it would be almost significant to
Mm.
find them there, because it seems like it would be almost a sanctuary of sorts.
Well, it's in the middle of Edinburgh, so it's a central location, and it's known to everyone. If you're in Edinburgh, anywhere in the town, you can see it. It's obvious. It's hard to miss.
Is there
Truth is, to this day, the who's and whys of their creation, really, they don't have a definitive answer, but they're having a lot of theories.
Mhm.
Um, Although I must say that between the time that they were discovered and the time that they were donated to the museum, there are actually only 8 surviving coffins at this point. Here they are. This is a
Oh.
picture of all 8
Oh,
surviving
wow.
coffins. That's all that's left. They don't know what happened to the rest of them, but this is what came down to them at the museum.
Someone's
And it's
gonna
in,
find that in their great auntie's attic.
Wait.
there's, hmm?
Also, I mean, if okay, let's go back and let's look at them for just a
Mhm.
second. And we're talking about them. They don't look childlike.
No, they do not. They look like adults.
Yes, if you look at the
Yeah.
details in the heads, these are
Mhm.
actually appearing to be grown. They almost look like grown men. They have very
Mhm.
exaggerated limbs. Their
Mhm.
arms seem to be very long. Um, I kind of, just kind of leaning back towards, let's talk about like New Orleans. What about something along the lines of voodoo dolls? Something of that
Aye.
nature.
See, they would be called puppets in
Oh, see,
Scotland.
I'm over here going, all right,
Puppets.
hear me out.
Puppets.
Aliens.
I'm like voodoo.
Well, I mean, the perplexing nature of this find was interesting enough to the point where all of the newspapers at that time each had their own little speculations, and they came up with various concepts of what they think these figures came from. The most popular just happened to be the suggestion that they were witchcraft of some sort, puppets. They could be
Okay.
some sort of little voodoo dolls, as they say, which isn't surprising for Edinburgh, because if you know anything about the history of the city, it is quite steeped with witchcraft hysteria.
Yeah.
Most people don't know that much about the witchcraft trials in Scotland, but they were centered around Edinburgh, and there were rather horrific and quite bloody. A lot of women were killed during that time. So they've always
Which,
had a bit of a thing about witchcraft, especially in places like Edinburgh.
so has anyone like research? I'm sure people have researched the dolls. You're researching the doll, but
Mhm.
like scientifically, has anyone gone in and been like, yes, I believe these were created around the blah 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 blah.
Due to the amount of decay and
Oh,
yeah, they're
okay,
not entirely certain, but they think they're no older than the 1700s, and they
okay.
obviously can't be any newer than the 1830s. So they're guessing they could be soldiers from the 1700s, little toy soldiers. They could be from the 1800s. And here's where some fun ones come in. There, on the other side of the witchcraft, there was a Christian specific thought, which was, as you had said, the idea of burying someone in lieu. Example, there was a time when there was a belief around the idea that you could not get into heaven if the body was not complete. So someone who
Ah,
died at sea or died in a foreign land and was never recovered, you
Mm,
could make a wee
interesting.
puppet and bury them instead as a way to get them into heaven. So there was that possibility. They thought it could be
mm.
people lost at sea. Being a seafaring country, it made sense that there would be quite a lot of shipwrecks, and there were so many that were attributed to this as a possibility. There was this many people died in this shipwreck, and this many people died in this shipwreck, and they thought that could be one of the possibilities.
Eli's commented down here, maybe they were harassed by supernatural forces that won't buzz off until the parents give up their child. In order to ward them off, the parents make these dolls as substitutes for their kids, which I think is kind of in line with what DL was saying. I like that concept. That's very intriguing.
Well, the idea that they were buried instead as a way of seeing it was most likely the more popular of all of the theories that had come up since they were discovered.
I'm sorry. Okay, I'm interrupting real quick.
Go ahead.
So people incomplete at the time of death. So like, okay, they've lost William and Roger overseas, and I'm making up names now. Steve went off to this country and he never returned. And then there's Fred over there who got his leg shot off one time, and he's like, "Yo, I'm still alive. Like, I don't need the. That's weird. I don't want to be at my own funeral." Okay,
well, actually, no. So if you know anything about Jewish faith, Jewish people believe that you have to be buried with your body entirely. And I have recently discovered that if, let's say you were a member of the Jewish community and you were to lose a limb, that your limb will be buried and wait until the rest of you. So I can actually definitely understand that concept, just because it's something that I have been privy to recently and that I have seen, and I kind of it's been explained to me a bit more, so I feel like I understand it a bit more.
That's really interesting.
That's a fairly common belief within a lot of Christian and Judeo-Christian faiths.
Yes. That brings up a lot more questions, but they're not really relevant to the show. So
it has to do with the resurrection, literally the resurrection of the body. If you don't have it, you can't be resurrected. So that's part of it. So that theory, it was the one that most people paid attention to. But then we have a dark and creepy theory, which I quite like.
Oh, we like these. Okay.
So in the 1990s, someone decided, have we not studied this? So they started looking into it and paying attention to when the puppets were created and testing some of the fabrics and such that they could. And one particular person came up with a theory that they were 17 figures that in fact represented the 17 victims of the infamous serial killers, Burke and Hare. Now, if you don't know, here we are, William Burke and William Hare. If you don't know them, they were Scotsmen in Edinburgh who were body snatchers, because at the time it was illegal to have a cadaver to study for medical purposes. It was illegal because part of it had to do with that the body must be complete, right? And so what they did was that they would kill people. Instead of going into the cemeteries and snatching the bodies, they decided it was much faster if they could just kill them than rather waiting and digging them up.
Yeah.
So they killed 17 victims and brought them to a local doctor who would, on the sly, bring them to the medical college so that they could be dissected and studied. Yeah, so I think there was 1820s in Edinburgh. They made quite a lot of money selling those unfortunate victims. So it suggested that these could be tributes to the 17 victims killed.
Well, and also if you have the concept of, because if you think about it, they were selling them, they were selling these victims for medical purposes, and those bodies would have been dissected. So they would not have been whole. So it could have been, I mean, honestly, it could have been their way of penance. You know, I'm going to take this person. I know that they're not going to be able to have an honorable death and an honorable burial, considering that they're all, and there is some question about when they were all buried, if they were all buried together.
Exactly. So we're not sure.
That's an interesting concept.
And with Burke and Hare, they were does not. Eli says William Hare does not look sorry. No, I
can we pull up the picture again?
Yeah. Shall we see Mr. Hare's
No, Hare does not look sorry.
He's smiling.
For anyone who can't see, we have William Burke, who looks like very grumpy at this Monopoly game that he's not gotten Boardwalk on, and he doesn't want to be here anymore.
So
and then we
there's a side eye too. Look at that side eye
going on Like that
Here's
bitch
here's
over there
what
is
I
And
like
guess.
a
stress,
boardwalk.
stress and side eye. That's what I'm seeing.
And then we
Even
have William Hare, who looks like he is at his favorite musical ever with the original Broadway cast. So excited
He's watching
to
Cats.
be here.
what's very interesting about that particular observation, when the two went to trial, this is just a fun little aside that you should know about. Um, Hare actually turned on Burke, and
Oh.
and so as a result, Burke was hanged, skinned,
Oh,
his
oh,
skin turned into a book, and his skeleton taken to the Royal College of Medicine in Edinburgh.
so,
He was the
so
grumpy
he made
looking
the
one in the picture?
Necronomicon.
The book still exists. I'm trying to remember. It's in a museum somewhere, but his skeleton and the book that is bound with his own skin still exists.
Okay, what book is it?
That
Was
I'm
it the,
dying
like
to know.
what did they make
I
it the
know.
Bible? Like is it
I don't remember, but I know it exists. So I always thought that was poetic justice for that to be the end of Burke.
the personal jewelry? Dear diary. Frederick
Oh, I'm
looked at
looking
me
it
the
up.
other day.
Oh, I am totally looking it up right
Oh,
now.
aye. That was lovely.
Let's
The
see.
only problem with that theory of the puppets being Burke and Hare's
Mhm.
victims is that the puppets all appear, at least, to be male, and most, or largely, but not all of Burke and Hare's victims were actually women. So you don't know.
Okay, well, they had a little bit more going on than the selling the body business. I'm just gonna say it.
Oh. Burke and Hare is one we should cover on a whole other subject. There's so much to unpack with those two.
Oh, yes, they're
So
very
much.
fascinating.
Very interesting. There have been books, there have been movies, there have been shows, there have been so much.
Were they not the inspiration for Frankenstein in some or I know that's probably a bit off
No.
in okay.
That's often time period.
Okay.
But body snatching in general was an extremely difficult thing. Example, another offsides a bit, but you know how everyone has these pictures of these graves that are Victorian, pre-Victorian, and such, Restoration era, that have like iron cages over the actual, and they say, oh, it's a vampire's grave. No, it's not. It's a wealthy family that didn't want the body snatched. That's what that is. That's all
Oh.
that is. They didn't want the body snatched because that had become quite a thing. People could make a lot of money.
Can it be both?
Well, technically, but that would be logistically very difficult for the body snatchers. So,
Yeah.
So
if you-
evidently
if
the Burkskin book is just called the Burkskin Pocketbook.
aye, there we are.
And you can buy for $4.99 pounds. You can buy a replica. You can go online, and it's currently in stock. If you would like to buy a replica of it at
I
the
think I need that.
Surgeons Hall Museum shop.
For only $4.99, you too can own a piece of Burke.
Eli says Burke got Lovecrafted.
Crafted. Yes. Okay.
Nice. I love it. That's lovely.
Are there any other
There are
theories?
so many more theories.
I want more
Oh
theories.
yeah. Let's hear the theories.
One of the most recent theories was actually from a book in 2018, an American author by the name of Jeff Nisbet. He suggested that the dolls are linked to what's referred to as the Radical War of 1820. Now, this is a bit odd. It's very local history. I don't expect people to know that much about it. In Edinburgh, the garment district, I suppose you could call it, the weavers and the seamstresses and some other workers, tanners and the like, launched a protest about their working conditions. It was bloody, it was not pretty, and it shut down huge parts of the city, as most protests do. But the three ringleaders, James Wilson, John Baird, and Andrew Hardy, were executed. They're just rounded up and executed. They thought, cut off the head, that ends it. And somewhere around 20, could be 17, we don't know. It just says somewhere around 20 were transported to Australia. Those that were remaining were put to work on constructing what is called Radical Road. It's an honest-to-God road. It's a street, which is still to be seen there at Arthur's Seat. It was hard labour. It was deadly labour. Several of them died during the construction of Radical Road, hence called the Radical War. Nesbitt researched all of this, and it led him to the theory that the dolls were put there as sort of a memento for those who had given their life for the movement that had been crushed, utterly crushed. There would be no sort of advancement or any kind of change to any of those workers' lives for at least another 100 years, to be honest, at that point. So there's that possibility. So, sort of up and down. And yet, there's still another bizarre out of left field theory that popped up in 2014.
Is it aliens?
It's sort of the darkest theory, in my opinion. The idea that it could be the work of an unknown serial killer, singular, like not working here, but someone else who was secretly, not doing it for money, but a serial killer. The coffins could arguably be seen as trophies. I mean, think about the fact that each one is dressed in completely different fabric.
clothes.
Each is different fabric, which could be from different outfits from different victims.
I would be curious if there was any way, because I mean, if you think about fabrics from a victim, think about how much of you gets into your skin or gets into your clothing when you talk about like shedding hair, shedding skin. If there's now, I know there's probably not going to be any type of DNA that's in this, but I would be curious to see if there's any type of just anything that you could discern from the fabrics individually to see if they might be in association with a victim's.
Shockingly enough, there hasn't been that much investigation of these things. I don't know why, but there really hasn't. There have been theories, and people sort of poked at it a bit, but no real in-depth investigation has taken place of these things. I don't know why.
It would be so hard to find any sort of how many times have they changed hands? How many times have they been punted across a football field? How many, that would be so difficult with how many people have touched them.
Right.
It would have been great had they been found and shoved in a bag and, but with the movement on them, I don't see how they could, at least DNA wise, find
the very
anything.
fact that there's only 8 left. You don't know what happened to the other 9. They just disappeared. No one knows where they went to. Were they destroyed by the boys?
They were arisen.
Possibility. Did they, when they passed from hand to hand, were only some of them kept together, and someone decided they want to keep one just for the fun of stick it away? So you don't know. There could be, as you said, someone's great grandmother could have them stuffed away in an attic somewhere forever, and you'd not know it. Don't know where they came from. Here's the fun thing, though, about the idea of it being a serial killer. There's
fun fact.
And a fun thing, a little fun note about serial killers.
The most bizarre thing about this was in 2014, a box arrived at the National Museum of Scotland. Just a box, no return address, nothing, just a box. Inside the box, however, was an identical coffin. I mean, identical, from the same era, same dimensions, same handiwork on the lids and the figures inside, all of it. Included was a handwritten note. At the top of the note, it said XVIII, as in the Roman numeral 18. And then at the bottom of the letter was a quote from a short story called The Body Snatcher by Robert Louis Stevenson, which was actually inspired by the crimes of Burke and Hare. The letter concluded with saying that the coffin was a gift to the Museum of Scotland for, quote, caring for the nation's treasures. And that's it.
Just basically another coffin. Did they test the coffin? Did they deter? Because I mean,
they know it was from the same time period. They can't say if it was actually one of the missing coffins. Perhaps it could be one of the 9 that they didn't know what happened to. Could be.
that it also had the number 18 because wasn't there 17
see,
initially?
that's the thing is, was it an 18th victim that no one knew about? And does that
Hmm.
automatically bounce it back to the concept that it's part of the Birkin here?
Goosebumps.
So, but no, I know. But they don't know.
So
They did not put it into the display with the other coffins. It's just in the archives along with the books and the letter.
wow. Okay, I
Okay,
have
so it's
questions.
archived.
Question?
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I have questions.
Question.
Was on the coffins, there were all those plaques and everything. Was anything written on
No,
them?
they
Anything they could
were
make out?
tin work. Back in the
Okay.
day, it was a fairly common decoration. I mean, you've seen like tin ceilings and that sort of thing. It was that look. It was like a hammered tin decoration. So no, there were no actual names, no dates, no words of any kind. It was
Okay.
just
Was there any possible symbolism though that might be taken from that? Because you think about family crests and stuff like
Mhm.
that. Were there any like significant shapes or designs in it?
As far as I can tell, no. It was
Can
just decoration.
can we pull the picture back up that
Mhm,
had the picture of the coffin lids on it? I
mhm.
just want to see the lids real quick.
I see there's decorations like in the
Yeah.
one and the lower left. You can see it's sort of a circular wreath sort of thing,
And we
and
got a
then you've got one
guitar
at the upper
pick.
right that we've got this guitar pick. At the upper right, you've
Well,
got your traditional coffin shape up there. But if you get up close to them, and I've seen them up close, they're literally just decorative. And I see if you see this one, the one on the left, the dark shape on the side of the coffin corresponds with the dark shape on the top of that coffin, which makes it look like a hinge. So
Okay.
it's just decorative to be sort of pretty.
Okay.
But I do
You're
love the idea that this could be an 18th victim of the murderers that
yeah.
started all of this. So I think it's creepy and interesting. I don't know, but there are times when you've got a sort of mystery and you love the idea of it being wrapped up in a neat little bow. And you can say, this is where it came from.
But there's also you mentioned that there's a lot of theories, but there's not a whole lot of research that's
Hmm.
gone into the determination of what it is. And I think there's an element of us that there's certain mysteries you just don't want solved. It's like we
Mm.
want to be able to speculate about these mysteries, and that feeling of
all right.
Sorry.
So Eli, sorry for the Eli has
he was not.
commented. Question: how are we not talking about Jack the Ripper? Totally not a hashtag Alan Moore or hashtag From Hell reference. Okay, maybe it is. We're just talking about hashtag serial killers.
Well,
Fair enough.
but with Jack the Ripper was based out of a very significant area.
Specifically, London, specifically Whitechapel. So it's a very tight little area there.
Whereas Burke
Also,
and Hare
mm,
they were Edinburgh.
also, but it's not only that. We're talking about a time period situation where Burke and Hare were much, much earlier. We're talking the 1820s, and
Mhm.
we're going almost, no, it's I think 1880s is when Jack the Ripper was happening, and we know that these have to have been before what 1836. So they have to have been from farther back. So no, that's an interesting idea, but I'm afraid it doesn't apply to this particular one. I'm afraid.
Unless Jack the Ripper's a vampire.
Time traveler Jack the Ripper. That's what we need, right?
Jack the Ripper in the TARDIS.
Oh no. No, no.
I've broken my own brain. Please talk amongst yourselves.
I do believe Jack the Ripper was 1888, if I remember correct.
1880s. I know it was late
Yeah.
1880s, but
Yeah.
so that's wrong time period. But it's interesting. It's sort of disturbing to think of just how many serial killers there were in the 1800s, because you think of that as more of a modern phenomenon, but it's not. It's just
Oh
I think there were
no.
probably quite a lot. They just weren't caught like they are now.
Well, if you think about it, the term serial killer is something that was not coined until much later.
Hmm.
I do believe was that John Douglas and his group at the FBI turned the phrase serial killer.
Could
So
that be in the
there wouldn't have
60s
been.
almost?
Yeah. So
That's
that wouldn't have been
yeah.
a label that we would have applied to, although we would now, we look at Jack the Ripper, we look at Burke and Hare, and we say, yes, those are definitely serial killers. But back in the day, this would not have been, that would not have been a term that was associated with them.
Apparently, the term serial killer was first used in 1974.
Ooh.
So there we are.
Was
That's just how far along it is. I would have thought it was earlier than that, but no, it's
Was it John
1974.
Douglas's? Was it John Douglas that?
Robert Ressler.
Robert Ressler. I'm sorry.
The 74 does not surprise me at all. There were
It's shocking.
so many serial killers in the 70s. I don't know if it was like the lead paint or what.
If you have not read the book Mindhunter, this is kind of jumping off of that, but since we're kind of talking about serial killers and the coining the phrase, and there was a series on Netflix that I'm really hoping that they bring
that.
Yeah,
It was
quite fascinating.
It was based on that. I think it might have been somewhat loosely based on that. I'm not really sure, but
Aren't
I
they
read
always?
the book. The book is phenomenal, and I mean, it really touches on a lot of different interactions with serial killers, and it is a one I highly recommend if you haven't read it.
All right, I have more questions about the coffins.
Okay, let's go back to the coffins.
Did they ever go back and search like the cave or the surrounding area to see if there are other caves?
Mr. Ferguson, as well as Robert Fraser, both went back to see if there were more. There were not. They found the exact cave where they were. They found bits of fabric and such, and they found a bit of flotsam and jetsam from where the boys were arsing around. But otherwise, no, there were no more found. But at the same time, having been to Arthur's Seat and seeing what the place looked like, I suppose that it could be other little caves that no one simply found because they're covered in slabs of shale. You wouldn't know. It's a beautiful place. It's very hilly. It's very desolate in the sense that it's just moors that go and go and go. It's beautiful, but then again, it's Scotland, which means that it's rainy and it's dreary and it's cold. So as a result, who wants to spend hours and hours searching for such a thing? It's amazing that these boys managed to stumble across it while they were hunting for a rabbit. One other thing that they mentioned was that it wasn't just a matter of them sort of stumbling on it, but that they'd been digging about because they had like trowels and little things like that, which is not all that odd for boys that were rabbit hunting at the time.
Oh, okay, rabbit. I'm sitting here like, we're going on a treasure
hunt. No. They dig them out of their borings, and that sort of thing. So they may have just been digging and doing what boys do. They have fun, they dig about, they make a mess. And as I said, it's possible that things like that could be hiding all over Arthur's Seat and you'd not know because it's so vast. And considering this was found 200 years ago, almost 200 years ago, goodness knows what else could be up there from that time, and you just not know.
I have another question. You mentioned that it is an active volcano. It's basically the crest. Was it active at that time?
It's extinct. It's extinct.
Extinct. Okay.
Long extinct.
Long extinct. Okay. I was just kind of curious because I know that that can play some, that can have some effect on how the Earth settles and how far, how things move about. So just kind of curious about that.
It's been long extinct as long as Scotland's existed. It's been quite some time. But as a result, it makes all these weird little caves and little openings and such that things can be hidden in. And considering the tumultuous state of Scotland over many centuries, goodness knows what could have been hidden there. There could be treasures of all sorts that people don't know about. That was not a weird thing to do back then. And previously, say 1700s, once again, whole other situation when it comes to Scotland. Yeah. My goodness, that's another show there.
So the Indiana Jones needs to go to Scotland in the next film, is what you're telling me.
So many fun things could be found there. It's like, I can't believe I'm seeing this. Watch Outlander sometime. Watch it and see. Although that's in a different area. That's not Edinburgh. That's far north where I'm from. It's in the Highlands. But it shows you quite a bit of Scottish history. Shockingly enough, not that far off. I mean, it's a bit it's fictional, but at the same time, it covers quite a lot that is worth watching if you're curious about Scotland, and it's quite interesting history. It's worth it. Oh,
Sounds
something
interesting.
fun I was going to mention about Birkenheer. Their murders, the mess that they made, and the number of people that they killed actually led to a new law being made in Scotland. It's called the Anatomy Act that happened in 1832, which allowed doctors and medical students greater access to cadavers. So they'd be allowed to legally have people donate bodies to medical science. Because up to that point, it was illegal to study anatomy out of anything but books, which is funny because you wonder, where did all of the pictures and illustrations come from the books that they were allowed to actually study?
Okay.
Well,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. There's legality, but in those type of eras, you have to realize legality doesn't always apply to everybody.
True. Very true.
I'm just trying to think and imagine this conversation be like, okay, so these guys, they've killed like 17 people. I don't know what to do. I mean, that's bad, but also like, it's kind of for a decent reason, guys. Like, we need, they've got a point.
You
We
know,
need
if they would have just let us donate bodies and dig them
Ah.
up.
Eli says, fun fact, your pal Eli.
Our
Grave
pal
robbers
Eli.
were once called resurrectionists. You bring them back
that
from the
should be
dead,
a
so to
movie.
speak.
There probably already is one.
There's so many. I wish I could remember the name. There's a really fun Birkenheer movie that has oh Christ, what was his name? One of the hobbits from the Lord of the Rings, Dominic, somebody other.
Oh yes.
And
my
it's based on Birkenheer, and it's actually disturbingly adorable. You watch it, it's sort of dark comedy in certain places, though it's definitely not a comedy. I mean, it's dark and ugly, and takes so many liberties, but it's a fascinating thing to watch.
During
called-
this whole conversation, did anyone else look at those puppets and be like, or dolls and think, Puppet Master?
The faces,
Puppet
no,
Master.
I know it does. It's very creepily similar. Joey the roadie says, "Dark and ugly, sign me up." That's a boy.
So the
Love it.
Birkenheer movie that you're referencing is called Birkenhair, and it was
Oh.
from 2010.
It's lovely.
2010.
Yeah,
I not heard of that
it's
one.
listed as a comedy.
I know. See, now I don't feel so bad for laughing at it.
Is it a
I
musical
laugh
too?
No, but now I need a Birkenheer musical. Damn you for making me want one now.
It's okay. There could be musicals for everything, even Birkenhair.
I know. You can see the coffins, the 8 that are still around, that have survived. You can actually see them in the National Museum of Scotland, which is on Chamber Street in Edinburgh. I'm sorry, I'm laughing.
We're stuck on a musical.
We've got a giggle going about
And
an
no
idea.
one knows why the coffins were made. Here's the theories.
Oh, there are so many jokes that could be made. So many jokes. Oh no. Eli says, dark and ugly comedy. Know that feeling.
Oh yes.
I love.
Oh my goodness.
But it's fun that the lovely sort of puppets are still in a bizarre and pretty little display there in the National Museum of Scotland. And behind them in their little display is actually a picture of Arthur's seat to show you where they were found.
Oh.
You keep saying Arthur's seat, and I'm like, who's him?
Arthur's seat. To see on the right-hand side, I say right hand, I'm facing it right hand. That little bump there, that is called Arthur's seat. That is the little hill that is part of the hills that make up Edinburgh. Edinburgh is very bumpy and hilly, and it's beautiful. And as I said, you see people, they're going up for a hike.
Oh.
That's what you do. And that is a national park. It's lovely. I think it's called Holyrood is the name of the national park. It's beautiful.
Question.
Aye.
Are national parks in other countries as terrifying as the national parks in this country?
I suppose it depends on which one you're going to. Like, see,
You think it's terrifying? Why?
National parks are so terrible. Kids go just missing.
oh,
And like they're completely
Oh.
unsolved. Do you have any other, like last time? What? Oh gosh, I can't remember the case. I can't remember her name. She was a YouTuber that would document her life travels with her boyfriend, and she went missing. Everyone knew it was the boyfriend, but she went
Oh,
missing.
yeah.
People went
Yep.
out in the national parks to look for her body and found like multiple other people's bodies looking for this one person.
no, I don't
Like
think that's happened
they're
in Hollywood.
terrifying.
No, I don't think that's happened in Hollywood. No, I don't remember many bodies being found at Arthur's Seat. Maybe it's a lack of woods. It could be. It's not a forest. It's lovely running moors. You know, it's flat. You can see across it. If there's a body, you're gonna spot it pretty quick. So, just saying.
Well, I'm just curious also if it's considered, because like the national forest here are extremely protected, so
Oh,
there's
aye.
areas. I'm taking it's kind of the same thing.
Aye, very much so.
Okay.
Aye. Scottish National Heritage is extremely serious. They take it quite serious. You
Maybe it's a
actually
bit more
have to be-
protected.
you have to have a certification to be a tour guide in Scotland. You have to be certified by the country. You have to have it
Interesting.
certification. And there's so many beautiful places and creepy places. And see, ladies, I'll have to tell you about quite a few fun and interesting isles around Scotland. They're
We would
delightful.
love to hear about those.
Oh, the
just wanna go
creepiness.
live there.
Creepiness. It's nice. It's nice. It's as long as you like it rainy and cold, which I do.
I'm good with
so
that.
I don't mind.
I'm good with that. I do have a question in regards to Arthur's Seat. Is there so a lot of times when you hear about national parks and national forests kind of in like our area, a lot of those have heritage that ties back to maybe sacred lands for Native Americans. There's generally a lot of history that goes alongside it, and there's some element of sacredness that goes alongside them as well. Is that something that you see here? Could that be the reason for why these coffins were buried?
See, unlike Ireland, which has quite a lot of paganism steeped into its very blood, the crags and the stones of the entire isle are, whether they like to admit it or not, are very pagan. And not so much in Scotland, to be brutally honest.
Interesting.
It's just not. There's not a lot of religiosity one way or another in Scotland. I mean, once upon a time there was a Church of Scotland which was very uptight and controlled, but the vast majority of Scottish people, especially now, are not particularly religious, whether that be Christianity or paganism or the like. They're just Scottish, and if you're Scottish, you're good. We're good, and life is good, and just move on with things like that. But at the same time, there is that little feeling of Celticness, because we have a lot of weirdness. We've got so many like lore and mythology of creepy beasties and that sort of thing, but it feels less reverent and more like, oh God, it's this thing again, is it? So I don't know, maybe it's just the Scottish are assholes, I don't know, but we're just less reverent about the whole thing. But there are definitely places that are spiritual, especially when you get up into the Highlands and you get up into the various and sundry little isles that are off of things, and anywhere where there's a loch. If you've got a loch, there's got to be some sort of something there. There's a creature and a beastie. Aye?
Can you spell
Lauren?
that, please?
Loch?
Yeah.
Loch. Loch.
A lake?
No. There's
Loch.
only one lake in Scotland.
Okay.
The rest are all lochs, I'll
Nessie.
have you know.
What
It's
what
true.
is
Like Loch Ness Monster.
okay, so
Aye.
what is the difference
Loch
between a
Ness
loch and
is
a
just-
lake?
I don't know, but there's only one.
So basically a loch is a body of water.
No,
And if it was here okay, wait. Okay.
There's a running joke in Scotland that when the English came in to do their what did they call it, surveying,
Uh-huh.
they did their surveying and they were saying all these things, and one particular lake, a loch just means lake in Scots Gaelic. It just means lake.
It's the lake.
But so well, if it was loch, yeah. But so For some reason,
Like-
this one particular one was listed as lake, and I can't even remember what it is now, but it's just listed as lake such and such. But it's the only one in all of Scotland.
Everything else is a
Every
loch.
other one is called loch. There's Loch Lomond. There's, everyone knows Loch Ness. So, but for some reason, there's just one. So the running joke is that
One
the English were being assholes and decided to call that one lake. So,
Because they couldn't figure out what the hell a loch was.
and the Scots being smart asses said,
That-
sure, lake. Go ahead with it then.
We'll give you
I just
this
love
one.
that. Yeah, we'll give you this one. Lake.
So
There you
it's-
go.
It's become
Yeah.
fun now that they jokingly say there's only one lake in all of Scotland. The rest are all lochs.
So realistically, what is the difference between a loch and a lake? Is there any?
Nothing.
Okay, thank you.
It's the same thing.
I was starting to feel stupid for a moment when you were going,
No.
oh no, there's a difference. I'm like, what? Wait a minute. Scooby
To the
Doo told me
Scots,
wrong?
it's
Story time.
it's a body of water inside land. There we are. Ta-da. And they're all the same. But it's just being smart arses.
And a lake is
Scots tend to be.
okay.
Loch sounds better. like
I
loch.
do. I agree. It does sound better. It's very. I don't know. There's just something when we are looking at other areas and other nations and we're looking at other countries and we're seeing all of this lore. There's something about it that you want it to be more spiritual. Sometimes you just want it to be something. It's like, oh, that sounds like it needs this wonderful, just sacred story about these mini coffins. And there's so many legends. There's so many theories about these. And the ones that, because you mentioned Lilliputian, Lilliputian,
Lilliputian.
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 And thank you.
Miss
And because and then I have also seen like them listed as fairy coffins.
Oh, there's also the theory that there could be some sort of little fairy coffins, something to keep the fairies at bay. That happens throughout all of the Celtic culture, whether they're talking about Scottish or Irish or Welsh even. There are moments where you do something just to keep the fairies at bay. Just give them cream, give them something to make them go away. Fairy burial grounds, as Eli says,
Interesting.
that's possible. I
All right.
know.
I have a theory. That's not really a theory. It's more like, okay, I'm pitching a movie to you.
I like
There's
it.
these random coffins and no one knows what the coffins are for. All of the research, blah, 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 lots of drama. And at the end, the coffins were the children that the fairies had kidnapped, and that's what they turned the children into.
Nice.
Oh,
That's not far off from quite a few stories. Oh, and the name of the only lake in Scotland is Lake Menteith.
Menteith?
Menteith.
Menteith.
Menteith. Lake Menteith. That's it. It's the only lake in all of Scotland is Lake Menteith. All others are
Interesting.
lochs. Just to be smart asses.
Yeah, lake.
I love it.
But hey, ladies, if you like, we can most assuredly do at least 1, 2, or 3 stories all about the creepy, horrible creatures that populate
Yes.
Scottish mythology.
Yes.
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
God, yes.
They're
Why would we
nasty.
not want to do that? That sounds
Most of them
amazing.
are so nasty. Between that and the ghost in various and sundry, any respectable castle's got a ghost. So I don't know.
Well, and I think that's once again where where we're looking at it going, oh, there's something so much more to it. There's so much fantasy. There's so much more. It's like we don't have the same lore. Sometimes we do have the same lore.
Aye.
It's just not as I think it's just not as what we would look at and go pretty and polished. 'Cause, I mean, if you think about it, a lot of Appalachian mountain culture is very similar.
I have to admit, it's been quite fascinating here recently. I've actually been studying some of the Appalachian stories, and it's quite bizarre. Learning that I know that quite a decent number of people that lived there actually came from the Isles, came from Scotland, came from Wales, came from Ireland, and there are so many similarities. It's quite shocking, really. I was stunned at some of the linguistics actually that come straight from Scotland. I mean, Scottish slang that goes straight into Appalachian, just a slightly different accent.
I want to know Scottish slang. Can we have an example of Scottish slang? Sorry. Let me just put you on the
Right,
spot
so-
real quick.
Here's a good one for someone who's talking shite. You say your bum's out the window. Say,
Your bum's out the window.
Your bum's out the window. That means you're talking shite. You're so funny. Your
It
bum's out
doesn't
the
sound
window.
anywhere near as beautiful as you say it, because I'm like, you're talking shite, your bum's out the window. I'm like,
Your bum's out the window.
I know, they're really southern. I think that would be the appellation. That's a little closer. It's like, you're talking a bunch of shit now. Your bomb's out the window.
Okay, I can
There we
hear
go.
it then. I can hear someone with like a really good. I've like my southern accent is half Wisconsin. But I could hear someone with like a really good, maybe like Georgian accent saying something in that way. That
Oh,
to me would
darling,
sound
your
good.
bum is out the window.
Yes.
Just a bit more. That's a bit more Tennessee Williams right there. I like that.
Oh yeah, okay. PGT Beauregard has to. Sorry.
There we go.
PGT Beauregard.
We'll have to see if we can have a Magda Scottish slang of the day at the end of every episode.
Yes.
I actually think it would be kind of a fun episode that if we actually looked at Scottish lore and looked at some of the Appalachian lore and see how let's contrast and compare. Yeah, let's see what's comparable.
That's
What came
fascinating.
and how it may have evolved differently. Just
Mhm.
as moving away from Scotland and moving into the US, how
Aye.
things might have changed. I think that would be very fascinating.
That would be quite interesting, I must
Mhm.
admit. I love finding correlations between the United States and the Isles in general. It's the same people in a lot of places, depending on where you are. And it's fascinating to find out just how much there's English in this area, there's Irish in this area, there's Welsh here, and there's Scots here, and see how things have evolved. I think it's fascinating. I love it. I love finding connections. I think it's neat.
I there's one in particular that always catches my attention that I absolutely adore, or I'm very fascinated with. I don't want to say necessarily adore, but I would imagine it has basis in Scotland as well, which is the Wendigo.
There are some bizarre creatures that could, I think there's several actually, that could sort of overlap into a sort of Wendigo sort of creature. There's a lot of creepy bears that could kind of work that way. There's fairies of one form or another. There's a lot of things that fit into that. And plus, there's so much that Scottish and Irish that just sort of blend over each other and mix together. And interestingly enough, because of the amount of Norsemen that came to Scotland, there's quite a lot of northern and Scandinavian things that mix in with a lot of Scotland as well. So it's very odd and interesting the way cultures merge and create something new out of the old. It's lovely.
I love it.
Fascinating. So yeah, we'll do that again. I'll have to pitch to you ladies later about all the creepy creatures of Scotland.
That sounds like a really awesome show. Maybe broken up into a couple of different shows if we
Oh,
want.
Oh yes,
it would take quite a few. Just for the sea creatures alone, that would be one. Then we've got the land creatures. So many to go through.
I hate to bring it up, ladies, but we are at the top of the hour.
I was
We
just
have
noticing that.
2 minutes till. Do we have a topic for the next thing, or are we just coming
Have
up
we
with
not
that?
decided yet?
I think that the last couple of episodes that we've been kind of pulling just kind of out of the clear blue sky, and I think a lot of it has been in reference to things that have happened recently, is how we've been kind of picking them. So
we had a calendar, and then like the world keeps happening, and then we'll look at it. We'll look at what we had planned and be like, oh, I don't want to do that. Y'all want to? Let's do this instead. And
yeah, we are all over the place when it comes to topics, but yes, we will have a topic, I am sure. I don't know what it is at the moment, but I do know that it will be fun and it will be fascinating. So yes, please tune in next week, or not next week, but the week after that. Next week would be our sister show Cryptid Crunch on at this time. So
definitely one to watch if you like creepy creatures.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, so if you want to learn more about what are you laughing at?
I'm giggling at you. You keep saying, yeah, so
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah. All right.
Good grooving with it tonight, baby. Yeah.
I'm tired. I'm sorry. I am tired. We just got in. I mean, we literally drove I hate to use the word literally. I can't because we always use it wrong.
Yes.
We drove from Texas to Tennessee, and I mean it was 7.5 hours. I am exhausted, and that's coming from being on the con floor. By the way, I just want to laugh because I know that everybody's like, "Why is she not in black?" That's weird. It's because I was in cosplay today.
Oh.
So anyway, we'll leave it at that.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's why I'm not
We're
in my
blue,
normal
so
attire.
So it's a weird one. We're both wearing color. This is not right.
I'm wearing color. Well, kind of.
We're
I'm
all
wearing
wearing-
black.
We're
Look,
wearing
ice
colours. Yeah,
cream.
Oh, look at that! That's adorable.
Oh, I love it.
Where did that come
Perfect.
from?
That came from our Gothic, which is
I
the
like
Gothic
it.
store from Rose Gal, or the Gothic brand
Oh,
of
right.
Rose Gal.
Cool.
Lovely.
Yeah, I needed
All right.
it.
So we are at the top of the hour, as Lauren mentioned, and I do believe that we are at the point to wrap this up for the evening. And anything else anybody wants to add before we?
No.
All right. And with that said, pleasant screams.
Night, lovelies.